In the wake of 2 attempts on Donald Trump's life, government officials are hard at work trying to determine why so many assassins are trying to kill a man government officials want dead. In their fearless pursuit of the truth, the Justice Department this week released a letter from the latest would-be killer in which the gunman offered $150,000 to anyone who would finish Trump off. In an appearance before the news media, Attorney General Merrick Garland said, quote, "I am absolutely appalled that this vicious criminal would offer so much money for what would be 15 minutes work, 20 tops. It's a very dangerous precedent. After all, just imagine what someone could buy with that much money. Even if you had to lay out, say, $6,000 for the sniper rifle, you'd still have enough left to buy almost anything you wanted. And boy, oh boy, don't the girls go for a man who flashes that big green. It's disgraceful that anyone would think loyal Americans would take money to eliminate an existential threat to democracy," unquote. The Attorney General went on to tell the news media, quote, "The DOJ will do everything we can to foil the plans of fanatical, Trump-hating sociopaths, present company accepted," unquote. Congress, meanwhile, continues its investigation into the security failures that led to the July attempt on Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania. Democrat chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, Senator Gary Peters, told reporters, quote, "We are determined to find out how a sniper got on top of a roof only 100 yards away from Trump with an absolutely perfect line of sight where it should have been almost impossible for him to miss. I mean, really, anyone but a complete incompetent could have made that shot. In any case, we will not rest until we know which faulty radio or local police officer is to blame for the Secret Service's failure to do their only job. Since Ronald Roe Jr. arranged security in Butler, he has been promoted to acting head of the service, so he more than anyone wants to fix the lapses that allowed the shooter to get in a position where really, how could he miss? It's absolutely baffling," unquote. The committee released on-site transcripts of Secret Service agents during the Butler attack, revealing several lapses in security. The transcripts read in part, quote, "Agent Brennan, President Trump has been shot. Agent Rowe, oh yeah, that reminds me, I think there's a sniper on the roof. Also, we've received some credible threats against the president. Agent Brennan, well, luckily, the sniper missed. Agent Rowe, how the hell could he miss? He was only 100 yards away," unquote. Even with the government making strenuous efforts to uncover something that sounds remotely like the truth, crazy conspiracy theorists continue to spin outlandish explanations for why a man with no motivational paper trail of any kind and no online presence except encrypted foreign bank accounts would first send a sophisticated drone to scout out a presidential appearance and then place himself in a perfect position to take an expert-level shot, which was only thwarted by the hand of God, even though God's application to the Secret Service had recently been turned down because he's a white man. On one right-wing platform, for instance, an anonymous silhouette hailed by conservatives as the most respected schizophrenic in America said that history reveals how a cabal of Jews forced Hitler to use precious resources, exterminating them, so that he would lose World War II. Allowing the few surviving Jews to escape to America, where they could nuke the Christians in Nagasaki and seize control of our space lasers so that at long last they could use their unbounded power to cluster together in a country the size of a postage stamp where everyone and his uncle can easily vaporize them. These same Jews are the ones who wanted Trump eliminated because he threatened to foil their mass suicide plan by bringing peace to the region. Some conspiracy theories are more plausible, however. For instance, it is true that the attempts to assassinate Trump were illegal, anti-democratic, directed at American dissidents, and completely incompetent. So they did bear all the hallmarks of a CIA operation. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back, laughing our way through the twilight of the gods. The most consequential election of our lifetime is 38 days away. The mainstream media won't tell you the truth. We will. At DailyWire Plus, we cut through the lies and deliver real, unfiltered news every day. Join us as we fight the left and build the future. DailyWire.com/subscribe. Also, Woman Underground, the next Cameron Winter mystery, the 4th in the series, is coming out on October 15th. This is the time, if you guys would put this book on the bestseller list, I would appreciate it. It means the series will continue. Number 5 is already written. This one is basically the turning point in the whole story because it shows how Winter kind of faces the crisis of his life. Spencer Klavan, no relation, and I will be at Landmark Bookstore in Franklin, which is right near Nashville, on Thursday, October 17th at 6 o'clock. I will be signing Woman Underground, and Spencer will be signing his new book, Light of the Mind, Light of the World, which is absolutely terrific. You come, please meet us both, get both books. And I'll be at the Mysterious Bookshop, which is my home bookshop. That's where Mysterious Press is headquartered. That's on Monday, October 21st at 6 o'clock. Please come. You can pre-order the book so you don't have to wait online. Last year we had an enormous crowd, and it was just so much fun. I got to meet so many people. I really appreciated it. Please pre-order this book and put it on the list. It will make a huge difference, and you'll love the book. These books are absolutely great. The Mystery Bookshop is downtown in New York City, Warren Street in New York City, near the World Trade Center. So come and meet me. And then, of course, if you are listening to this show on YouTube or DailyWire Plus, wherever you listen to the show, if you can leave a comment and that comment is morally reprehensible, we will include it on the show because that's how we go. Today's comment comes from, I'm going to say Florida Grown. It's FL Grown. It says, your show is Saturday morning cartoons for adults with IQs over 99. That's a little, I think I'm going for IQs from about 70 up. But yes, some Saturday morning cartoons for adults, absolutely. Let us get to today's episode, Feelz Don't Care About Your Facts. Let me begin by recapping where I feel we're at in the big picture in this election. The dominant baby boom generation, my generation, is passing away. I'm hoping they won't take me with them, but I'm suspicious. They're passing away, and that is leaving a failed elite that is trying to cling to power without changing the failed ideas that brought them to power, because while those ideas have been wildly destructive to the country and the world, they've given the elite their power and money. So they want to cling to power, but they don't want to get rid of those ideas. This happened also at the end of the Soviet Union. At the end of the Soviet Union, basically the powerful had to choose between admitting the revolution had failed or clinging to power. They could admit the revolution had failed and maybe let go of their power, but they wanted to keep the power, so they wouldn't admit it, and the whole thing crumbled. They chose power, and that's what's happening here now. These officials have failed. We're deep in debt. The world is going to hell. We can't afford the stuff we're paying for. We can only buy more stuff and raise taxes. And that's what's happening. They do not want to let go of the power. At the same time that's happening, the internet has broken the elite's monopoly on information, so they have to try to silence the opposition in order to hide their failure. That's on one side. So you have these lies coming out of the powerful and attempts to silence anybody else. And on the other side, the opposition, which is us, is individualized, fragmented, and it makes it difficult to separate solid truth tellers, like you get at the Daily Wire, from cynical haters and lunatics who are just spinning conspiracy theories because they know people will show up to hear them. And finally, as always, and this is the important thing and kind of the theme of today's show, is there's the sinfulness of every human heart, which makes us so desperately long to hear our own opinions confirmed. They call it, social scientists call it confirmation bias. I call it original sin. We want to hear our opinions confirmed and reinforced, and we resist any truth that might make us change our minds. It makes us very anxious to hear that maybe our opinions are wrong. And so we're telling people we want to hear their lies they're spewing. This is on the left and the right, whether it's right-wingers who we know have lied to us before but are saying things we want to hear. We'll listen to them again and again. And of course, the left is looking at this completely make-believe candidate and saying she must be great, and we don't really want to hear what she has to say, and just keep telling us lies. So all of this boils down to, on one side, we have liars. On both sides, we have liars. And on the other, in the center, we have us, who are basically praying that they will just go on lying to us because it's the lies we want to hear. So let's get to chapter 1, the quiet part, out loud. Oh, go to Beam Ad. I like Beam Ads because I like Beam. I really love this stuff. It really does taste good. It really does work. It's natural, so you don't wake up feeling groggy in the morning. And, for most of you, I know that this is a bigger problem than it is for me, because for you, tossing and turning all night is a frustrating experience. For me, it's just nighttime. That's basically what I do. But really, at times, it can be physically and mentally draining. That's why I love Beam. It's not just your run-of-the-mill sleep aid. It's a concoction carefully crafted to help you slip into the sweet embrace of rest without the grogginess that often accompanies other sleep remedies. Beam Dream contains a powerful, all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. My listeners can get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their best-selling hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. It's now available in delicious flavors like cinnamon cocoa, chocolate peanut butter, and mint chip. Better sleep has never tasted better. Just mix Beam Dream into hot water or milk and enjoy before bedtime. If you find yourself battling the bedtime blues, give it a shot. And if you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, this is the time to take advantage of 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan at checkout. That's shop, BEAM.com/Klavan with my promo code Klavan for up to 40% off your order. They tell you how to spell Beam, but they leave you wondering, scratching your head, thinking, how? Oh, how do I spell Klavan? It's Klavan. What's kind of amazing to me is this entire system of lies meant to keep the failed elite in place and the lies of crazy people on the opposition who just want to get big audiences and make themselves important are right out in the open at this point because the audience wants to be lied to, because so many people in the audience want to be lied to, want to have their opinions confirmed instead of hearing facts that might, get in the way of their feels. It's all out in the open. They're just lying openly. None of the dishonesty is hidden away. And this is kind of what happens when things get corrupt at the highest level, when you feel so sure that the entire system is corrupt. You start bragging about your corruption. You start strutting your corruption because it basically confirms your power. It says we lie because you hate the opposition more than you love the truth. So you want us to lie, and so we will lie right out in the open. Stephanie Ruhle, MSNBC anchorwoman, goes on Bill Maher with Bret Stephens. Now, Bret's an intelligent, kind of mostly conservative guy, but he is an absolute virulent never-Trumper. That's why he left the Wall Street Journal to go right at the New York Times. And once you're at the New York Times, you sort of become part of that machinery. Bret Stephens, good guy though he is, intelligent guy though he is, literally could not go on and write his column saying, I changed my mind. This Trump fellow is actually pretty good. He is a virulent anti-Trumper and never-Trumper and has become more so over time. And he says to Stephanie Ruhle, anchorwoman on left-wing MSNBC, he makes the obvious point that it's not enough to hate Trump. Harris also has to turn out. Kamala Harris has to turn up and tell us what she thinks and do some interviews and be put on the spot and be challenged. And listen to Stephanie Ruhle's reply.
And so there are some things you might not know her answer to. And in 2024, unlike 2016 for a lot of the American people, we know exactly what Trump will do, who he is, and the kind of threat he is to democracy.
I don't know.
So it's unclear to me how there could be an informed...
The problem that a lot of people have with Kamala is we don't know her answer to anything, okay?
But you know his answer to everything.
And that's why I would never vote for him, and people shouldn't vote for him. But people also are expected to have some idea of what the program is of the person you're supposed to vote for. You're just not supposed to say, well, you have to vote for Y because X is this, that, and the other. Let's find out a little bit more. And I don't think it's a lot to ask her to sit down for a real interview as opposed to a puff piece in which she describes like her feelings of growing up in Oakland with nice lawns.
Then I would just say to that, when you move to Nirvana, give me your real estate broker's number and I'll be your next door neighbor. We don't live there.
We don't live in Nirvana, so we can't get a presidential candidate to do interviews. He's basically saying, the press, should not do our job, and that's okay. It's unnecessary for me to do my job. Let her lie. We hate Trump so much. We hate Trump more than we love the truth, right? So what happens? Stephanie Ruhle, the Kamala Harris campaign says, that's the journalist we want, and they immediately assign her the job of having an interview with Kamala Harris. All right, so she starts talking about Kamala Harris has this new economic plan, which despite its, loving the middle class and I'm a capitalist language, which is all nonsense, is Bidenomics. It is just Bidenomics. Now, some of this I'm reading from the Wall Street Journal, which had a list of the programs, but this is it. Higher taxes to make corporations and the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But she endorses $5 trillion in tax hikes that was in Mr. Biden's budget, including, and this is a big one, this is really important, 25% tax on the unrealized capital gains on top earners. That is essentially stealing your savings and making it less likely that people will invest, right? Because unrealized capital gains, if that means your investments have made interest, but you haven't sold them. You haven't made any money. It's just your stock went up, they take that money. So they're taking money out of your bank account. They're taking money away if your house goes up, and even if your value of your house goes up, even if you haven't sold it, they're taking money out of your bank account. It's basic. I mean, so much of this is stealing anyway, but this is really, truly stealing. And they say, we're only going to do it to the rich, which is always what the socialists start out saying, but they get to you eventually, believe me. New and bigger entitlements. She wants to revive the Build Back Better plan that couldn't even make it through a Democratic Senate to support entitlements for childcare, preschool, long-term care. But this is trillions of dollars we're talking about in new spending with the debt soaring. More transfer payments, which is where they steal money from one person and put it to another person. More housing subsidies, which would put the federal government in charge of local zoning and building laws. All right. So we talk about buying a new home. This is cut two.
Home ownership for too many people in our country now is elusive. Gone is the day of everyone thinking they could actually live the American dream. So part of my vision for the economy is let's deal with some of the everyday challenges that people face and address them with common sense solutions, such as affordable housing.
Affordable housing. That means that why are they paying for houses, right? Now, remember that the Democrats have not only been in power for the last 16 years, but here's the thing, and I feel compelled to remind you of this because I know that people even under 50 don't remember this, okay? I keep mentioning the Great Society. Why do I mention it? Because it's the turning point. It's not the New Deal that's really the turning point. That begins it. But the Great Society is the turning point where they start to openly talk about being socialist behind the scenes. They don't talk about it openly in the open. They talk about it openly behind the scenes. JFK has been shot. LBJ takes over, just like Biden. He decides, this is a guy who's been in the Senate. He's been a master of the Senate, just like Biden. And he decides suddenly he wants to be the new FDR, just like Biden, and starts passing one program after another. This is going to be the Great Society. And he basically, within 5 to 6 years, destroys the most powerful economy that has ever existed, the post-war 1965 economy that is just skyrocketing. It'll never go away. Nothing's going to happen. By the time Jimmy Carter gets into office, the whole thing is falling apart with what? Inflation and stagnation, right? That's stagflation. They start to, talk about that. And the thing about that is Nixon just doubled down on it. People think about Nixon as a great conservative. No, he actually doubled down on the Great Society, continued it, and Reagan tried to dial it back, but he failed. And so Reagan basically saved the economy by cutting taxes, which started the spiral, didn't start the spiral, but continued the spiral into debt because he couldn't get rid of the programs, because once you get that juice, once you get that heroin of free money, you think is rich people's money, then who's going to say no? Who is going to say no? So always you should be asking yourself, whenever you hear somebody say, we have to invest in jobs, whenever you hear a politician say that, you ask yourself, why are you investing in anything? It's my money. Why aren't you just building roads and keeping the army out there? I should be deciding who to invest in. This unrealized capital gains, it means they rob your savings and stop your investing, and then they say, oh, we're investing the money. My wife invests. You know why? Because I've told this story, I'm not going to tell it again, though it is hilarious. After a while, I start to realize, I have all these economic advisors. My wife wanders through every now and again and says, this new Amazon company is a good idea. This Netflix sounds like it might work. And I thought, you invest the money because you keep getting it right and everybody else keeps getting it wrong. She should invest the money. That means the things that work start to make money, the government is always saying things like, well, we have to, save manufacturing. You can't save manufacturing. Manufacturing is going to end because robots can manufacture things. Capitalism is harsh and it's cruel. And sometimes I'm in favor of padding that harshness a little bit, softening it. But in the end, that's what happens. Capitalism means creative destruction. It gets rid of things. And the reason that's better than the government doing it, okay, is because if you have a business and you make widgets and nobody wants your widgets, you go out of business. So you have to make something else. But if the government makes widgets, they don't go out of business. They never go out of business. And if people say, yeah, we want widgets, give us those free widgets, the government just keeps making widgets forever. You saved my job making widgets. What a wonderful thing. Eventually, that's the death of a country. We're all making, horses and buggies while everybody else is making rocket ships that fly around. That's how economies crash, because it's nice for the government to save your job or to pay for your house, but it doesn't do anything to create wealth. That's what businesses do. And so I don't want to sound like Ayn Rand. I'm not. I understand that you have to soften the edges of capitalism, but basically what they're doing is destroying capitalism. So Stephanie Ruhle, to her credit, actually points out that if you start taxing businesses, because that's what they're going to be doing, they're going to be raising taxes, corporate taxes. You hear that, we're going to raise corporate taxes. What's to stop the billionaires and the corporations from pulling out like they did with Obama? That's what happened with Obama. They took billions of dollars offshore because they didn't want Obama stealing their money, right? And they all came swarming back once Trump convinced them that he was going to cut regulations and let business thrive. So she asked, where is the money going to come from? Here is Kamala's answer, cut 3.
Expanding that child tax credit, or you mentioned housing before, giving that extra money for a first home. If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share. I am not mad at anyone for achieving success, but everyone should pay their fair share.
Now, they say that because fair sounds good. You think fair share of what? Do I have to pay my fair share of like mafia protection money? Do I have to pay my fair share of her stealing money and giving it to somebody else because that's the person who's going to vote for her? Do I have to pay my fair share of what is essentially graft that they call the Green New Deal, where they pay off their friends to create cars that nobody wants? What fair share? There is no fair share. My fair share of that is zero. That is my fair. That is Elon Musk's fair share of that. No matter how rich you are, your fair share of garbage is zero. Okay, so that's no answer to the question. You might have noticed, and Stephanie Ruhle says this, cut 4.
One could watch that and say, well, she didn't give a clear, direct answer. That's okay, because we are not talking about clear or direct issues.
Yes, you are. See, this is the other thing with the economy. So few people understand it, and economists don't understand it, that the basics get lost. You do understand some of these things. One of the things she is absolutely depending on, is the global minimum corporate tax rate. Now, this was something that was negotiated by Biden's Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, was negotiated a global minimum corporate tax rate where several countries said, yes, we will all have a minimum corporate tax so that companies don't leave the places where they're overtaxed and move to other countries where the taxes are less. Now, the Congress has not approved that agreement. So we're not collecting the money, even though those taxes are supposedly in place. What is that? What does that mean, a global corporate tax? That's the Berlin Wall. That's the Berlin Wall. It's a way of keeping corporations where they're being abused, where their profits are being taken away, so they don't move to some place where they can be free to do business. That's what it is. It's the Berlin Wall. It is the final solution of every communist country. Build the Berlin Wall so people don't run away from the bad things we're doing, because the bad things we're doing are so good. The thing is, the bad things are really good for the people who are doing them. They're making you powerful. They're giving you all the decision-making power. They're making you say, oh, I'll build a house here, and these people can move there. And yes, this business will do this, and this business will create this kind of car that I want, not that kind of car that the people want. It gives you all that power, but it ruins everything because nobody wants that car, because nobody wants people living in that neighborhood, because nobody wants those sorts of houses. It's always the way socialism covers its failures. And meanwhile, Kamala comes out and she says that this is the other thing that drives me nuts. Kamala says this. So not only have the Democrats been in power for everything but the Trump years, these last 16 years, but they've really been, in some sense, in power from LBJ on. I mean, Kennedy was a tax cutter. LBJ was the guy who spent us into this debt. Nixon continued LBJ's Great Society policies. Reagan tried to dial them back but couldn't. We have been in the Democrats' thrall basically since World War II, and this is what she says.
We just need to move past the failed policies that we have proven don't work.
Which are her policies. And by the way, they're not Biden's policies. This is what Biden said on The View.
And as vice president, there wasn't a single thing that I did that she couldn't do. And so I was able to delegate her responsibility on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy.
So she as far as he was concerned, she was as much the president as he was. She agrees with everything he has done and said and wants more of it. There's no question about this. There's no question about it. These are not so complex that we can't understand it. We can understand why government taxing things makes things go down. So if you tax corporations, you get less powerful corporations. You get corporations that make less money, so they do less. She also has price controls. What do you think happens with price controls? If I can't sell you a dozen eggs and make a profit off it because you've got price controls on me, I'm not going to do it. There'll be no eggs. You won't have eggs. That's exactly what happens every time there are price controls. Is exactly what Nixon did when he was trying to solve the Great Society without ending the Great Society. This has all happened before, but these people don't know that because they don't know anything. They're ignorant, and so it's all too complicated. But one thing we know, Trump bad. That is the one thing we know. But the thing is, since they're all Democrats, since they all live on the coast, since every single one of them never talks to anybody who disagrees with them, how can they think anything but that Trump is bad? How can they even know what, they say, oh, we know what Trump would do. When he was in office, we didn't have this inflation. We didn't have these wars, So what is it he's going to do that's so horrible besides not listen to them and make fun of them and call them the liars that they are? It's amazing. It is amazing that these lies are right in front of our face. And all we get from the journalists and other Democrats is, please lie to us. All right, you have got to prioritize your health. You really do, but you got to know where to start too. And that's why I want to tell you about Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning to know what's going on with your metabolism, meaning whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. And once that's been determined, the app gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, even stress management. Forget the one-size-fits-all diet fads. What sets Lumen apart is its ability to understand you on a personal level. It's so easy to use. It's kind of fun. It's also fun to see what's going on. You don't have to stress about what you should be eating the morning after you maybe pig out a little bit. Lumen's ability to craft a personalized nutrition plan for each day tailored to my body's needs and goals is revolutionary. With Lumen, you're not just getting a device, you're getting a health companion. Breathe into it before and after a workout or a meal and gain real-time insights into your body's metabolic response. If you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Klavan to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/Klavan for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. And thank you, Klavan, for telling us how to spell Klavan, which is Klavan. Chapter 2, Censorship with a Bullet. So we were talking last week about how Trump is not a danger to democracy. He's a danger to the jobs of the failed elite. He's a danger to the system by which the elites rule, which is clearly a system that benefits them. And they hate him not for his flaws, which he has many of. They hate him for his virtues, which is the fact that he actually does seem to care about the ordinary guy. And he can't help himself but blurt out the truth about the life he himself has lived. Do you remember last week I played that Dave Chappelle clip where he talked about the fact that Trump exposed, as a rich guy, as an insider, he exposed what the outsiders and the poor folks and the middle class folks already know, that the system is rigged against them. And it's especially rigged against the middle class and people who want to rise into the middle class because it makes the poor dependent, so they no longer work the way they would if they really were ambitious, so they don't rise into the middle class. That's what happened. That is what happened to a lot of the poor, and especially black poor, after the Great Society came in. It stopped their rise into the middle class. It's an amazing thing. You can see it on charts. When the Civil Rights Act was helpful, that really helped blacks get out from under the heel of racism, which was a real thing. But the Great Society stopped that. It broke up families. Under the Great Society, they literally said, oh, you can have housing, but you can't have your husband move in. If you have a husband, you can't have the housing. So husbands moved out. They disappeared. And they really did purposely break up the black family and destroy the the center of the rise into the middle class, which is the family. And when they tell you, oh, only people who pay $400,000 a year are going to be taxed, it's crap, because they're not going to tax the billionaires, because the billionaires are going to go someplace where they're not taxed, and they can have their global tax, and that means they won't go to Switzerland, but they'll go somewhere else. They'll go to Dubai. They'll go somewhere where they're not going to be taxed. They'll build an island. They'll go out with a thing and blow up an island, and they'll live on a little float in the middle. They will not be taxed. You will be, no matter how much you're making. Ultimately, socialism always guts the middle class and leaves only the poor and the powerful. That's who's always left with socialism. So here's the moment in the Hillary-Trump debate. This is 2016, that Dave Chappelle was talking about. Here is why they hate Trump. This is Trump being questioned by Anderson Cooper. Cut 8.
Did you use that $916 million loss to avoid paying personal federal income taxes?
Of course I do. Of course I do. And so do all of her donors, or most of her donors. I know many of her donors. Her donors took massive tax write-offs.
So have you not paid personal federal income tax?
A lot of my write-off was depreciation and other things that Hillary, as a senator, allowed. And she'll always allow it, because the people that give her all this money, they want it. That's why. See, I understand the tax code better than anybody that's ever run for president. Hillary Clinton, and it's extremely complex, Hillary Clinton has friends that want all of these provisions.
So that's why they hate him, right? Because when Kamala Harris says, I'm helping the middle class, she's not going to do it, because the rich people are the people who will put her in power. And so they're not going to do anything that actually hampers the wealth of the wealthy, because the wealthy are running their campaigns and funding their campaigns. She's raising so much more money than Donald Trump. Why? Why do you think that is? Because Trump actually did narrow the gap between rich and poor, between black and white. He actually did that, and was the first president to do it in generations. All right, but here's the other thing that I want to talk about with Trump: the international order. The Biden presidency, the Biden-Harris administration, has been an absolute disaster on the international scene. We are careening toward what could be World War III. I don't want to panic about it or anything like that, but things are bad. Things are looking really bad on the international scene. Now, here's a list. Again, this is a list from the Wall Street Journal, but I'm adding things to it. Mr. Biden's chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan was his single most damaging decision. It has led to cascading trouble. The Taliban control the country and are reimposing feudal Islamist rule. This, for the women in Afghanistan, is a disaster. More damaging is the message his withdrawal sent to adversaries about American will and retreat. The credibility of U.S. deterrence collapsed. Mr. Putin concluded he could invade Ukraine at limited cost, especially after Mr. Biden blurted out that a minor incursion might not elicit the same Western opposition. After Kyiv bravely resisted, Mr. Biden sent weapons, but too little and too delayed at every stage of the war. This is what he does all the time. No, yes. We're not going to give it to you. Oh, now we'll give it to you now that it's too late. His record in the Middle East is worse. Rather than build on the Abraham Accords he inherited, he tried to ostracize Saudi Arabia, and he banned offensive weapons to fight the Houthis, which is Iran, just like Hamas is Iran, just like Hezbollah is Iran. From the start, he courted the mullahs in Iran to renew the 2015 nuclear accord that had enriched Iran before Donald Trump withdrew. Okay? He refused to enforce oil sanctions even as Iran spread mayhem through its proxy militias. The U.S. was caught flat-footed when Hamas, aided by Iran, invaded Israel and massacred 1,200 innocents. Meanwhile, Iran marches undeterred to becoming a nuclear power. Now, this was huge. It's hard to describe how much Obama sacrificed and maneuvered and manipulated and lied to get this Iran deal in place. And there is a reason for that. Obama is an anti-colonialist who thinks America is the problem. When he said, I'm going to fundamentally transform America, he was telling the truth. When his wife said his election was the first time she had ever been proud of her country, she was telling the truth. They think this country is the problem. Dinesh D'Souza was virtually sent to jail for a nothing campaign contribution violation because he pointed this out after reading a close reading of Obama's book, Dreams from My Father. And he wrote about it in a magazine. He made it into a movie, but the movie was not as good as the article he wrote for Bloomberg. that just said this is true, and they immediately just pounded him. And then he got caught with this he should have paid a fine for a bad campaign contribution, and instead they made him go into detention. It was absolutely disgusting because they did it because it was true. Now, one of the things that happened was this, one of his people, and I'm saying all this because people forget everything because we live in this news cycle that puts things out. We're like goldfish. It puts things in front of you and then they disappear. Andrew Stiles at the Free Beacon talked about the rhetoric of the golf course shooter, the guy who sat on the golf course for 12 hours with an AK-47 before the Secret Service discovered him, waiting for Donald Trump. And Andrew Stiles at the Free Beacon pointed out that his rhetoric is exactly the same rhetoric as one of the chief architects of the Iran deal, right? This is Ben Rhodes, and you probably don't even remember Ben Rhodes. He's Obama's aide. He was like a deputy security guy, and he's the guy who he was in the New York Times. There was a feature about him in the New York Times, and he laughed at the press in the New York Times magazine, about how they sold the Iranian nuclear deal, and they told all these lies about, we're only negotiating with moderates, absolute nonsense. And he said, they'd been negotiating for years with them, and this was Obama's major foreign policy thing was to basically appease a country that wants America dead because he thought it would allow us to retreat from the Middle East while Iran destroyed Israel and took the place over. That's what he did. That is basically his plan, right? So Rhodes laughed in this article. He said, this is a quote, "The average reporter we talk to is 27 years old and their only reporting experience consists of being around political campaigns. That's a sea change. They literally know nothing." He was crowing about the fact that they sold the Iran deal to reporters who knew nothing. And what did the New York Times say? And what did all the reporters say? Oh, that wonderful Obama. Please lie to us some more. Lie to us some more. When Trump pulled out of the deal, Rhodes said, this is what Rhodes said. This is cut 9.
Donald Trump's tearing up agreements contributed, I believe, directly to October 7th. Between Israel and Hamas. And so Donald Trump's not going to solve these problems, and he's going to make them worse.
It didn't happen under Trump. It happened under Biden because Biden was so obviously weak and because Biden enriched Iran. Again, what Trump did was he killed their leader, Soleimani, one of the leaders of this terrorist state. And while all of the press said this is going to be World War III, nothing happened. They fired some missiles into the dirt because they were terrified of Donald Trump. And now they are threatening to kill him. They're plotting his death. There are all kinds of rumors that they're out there. There are all kinds of open threats. And Trump points out that the Biden administration is doing nothing about it. This is what he says, cut 7.
But if I were the president, I would inform the threatening country, in this case Iran, that if you do anything to harm this person, we are going to blow your largest cities and the country itself to smithereens. We're going to blow it to smithereens. You can't do that.
That is what Trump would do. No one can doubt that. And it is what Biden should be saying. But they're not saying anything. They're not saying anything. They're not doing anything. They've got this completely incompetent, if not suspicious, Secret Service, leaving Trump out there twice where he almost got killed. Unbelievable faults. And now they're doing these investigations in Congress. And I got to tell you, as you know, I am like the opposite of a conspiracy theorist. It's very rare that I think that many people are intelligent enough and disciplined enough to get together to form a conspiracy. But I just feel that both Democrats and Republicans in Congress are basically putting on a dog and pony show where, yes, they show us all the stupid stuff that went on. The radios didn't work. They didn't coordinate with the police. They got, warnings that there were credible threats against Trump and didn't pass those warnings on. They let the shooter in July 13th, they let him climb up on the roof. This guy is sitting at the golf club. He's sitting in a place where the paparazzi go, so they know it has a good line of sight on Trump. And the investigation is coming down to the point where literally this guy Roe Jr., who should be out on his ear, is saying, well, we need more money. We need more money to buy better radios. We need more money because we need more Secret Service agents. And if they give these clowns more money without firing the asses of every single person who made a mistake, then you will know that this is a fraud. It is a fraud. They are just pretending to investigate this thing. So the Iran, in that Stiles article, he writes about the fact that the shooter on the golf course used so many of the Ben Rhodes phrases in his self-published book explaining why he was going to assassinate Trump. He said he ended relations with Iran like a child, which is exactly what Rhodes said, and now the Middle East has unraveled, which is exactly what Ben Rhodes said. He said Iran is therefore free to assassinate Trump as well as himself for not succeeding at assassinating Trump. So the failure of the Iran plan, the failure of this plan is another thing they are trying to hide and to censor. The Middle East is unraveling under Biden because of Obama. Under Biden because Biden put away the Abraham Accords, which did so much to bring peace to the Middle East, because they told the Palestinians, who are just Iran, we are not doing this anymore. There's not going to be a two-state solution. We're going to go with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia, who's afraid of Iran, we're going to have them become unified with Israel, because Israel is also afraid of Iran. Why not actually come together against your enemies? That was a brilliant plan. And of course, it's exactly what the State Department, the smartest, stupid people on earth, would not do. Trump did it. He broke the rules, just like he breaks the rules when he talks about taxes and when he talks about the system being rigged. He broke the rules. He got things done. He got things changed. And that's what they hate about him. And this system they have that they make up in their heads, it's all in this imaginary. If you've ever met anybody in the State Department, they're incredibly brilliant and wrong about everything. It's amazing. You talk to them and you just think, wow, this is a really highly intelligent, highly educated guy. And then stuff starts coming out of their mouth about two-state solutions, and Israel was wrong to bomb the nuclear facilities of Saddam Hussein as a violation of international law, as if that existed. It is just insane. And so these assassination attempts are, in some sense, Stiles says that basically Ben Rhodes is to blame for the assassin. That's not true. But in some sense, they grow out of the fact that not just the Democrats can't accept their own failures, but the followers of the Democrats, if they're crazy enough, can accept the fact that these things have failed. Just like Stephanie Ruhle can accept the fact that the Bidenomics has failed, which is LBJ-onomics, which is Great Society economics, which is the New Deal economics. They can't accept the fact that that's failed, and they can't accept the fact that their foreign policy has failed. And so everyone has to be silent, even if it means they're silenced with a bullet. Everything comes down to 3 words: lie to us. So I enjoy these apps that give you fantasy sports games. I love sports and I like fantasy sports games. There is a new one called PrizePicks, which is going to revolutionize your game day experience. Imagine this. You're watching the big game, and suddenly every yard, every touchdown, every play becomes a potential win for you. That's the thrill PrizePicks brings to over 5 million active members across America. PrizePicks isn't just another fantasy app. It's a test of your sports knowledge and intuition. All you have to do is predict whether a player will go over or under their projected stats. It's very simple, and it's really engaging. I mean, you get caught up into it right away. There's more, too. PrizePicks is so confident in their platform that they're offering an unprecedented deal this September. Just 1 passing yard from Caleb Williams gets you an automatic win every football weekend. 1 yard. And for those of you who love a challenge, PrizePicks now offers the chance to win up to 100 times your money with just 4 correct picks. Now, I just got mine yesterday, and I used it on Thursday Night Football, and they would give you the quarterback, tell you, is he going to get this many pass yards? I picked no, he wouldn't. No, he didn't. Lots of fun. So you too can download the PrizePicks app today and use code Klavan to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code Klavan, Klavan, on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Chapter 3, True Lies. So the other way in which they are silencing the opposition is through these targeted corruption investigations. And I call them true lies because most of these guys are corrupt. So they're just, for the first time, indicted the sitting mayor of the biggest city in America, New York City, Eric Adams. They indicted, he's a former police captain, and they indicted him for taking money from Turkey to travel and taking free hotels and giving them breaks on building fire codes and not talking about, things they didn't want him to talk about and all this stuff. Now, I'm almost virtually sure these charges are true. I mean, I feel really confident. Eric Adams, first of all, is an absolute idiot. He is one of the stupidest people I have ever seen rise to high office, and that is saying something. I don't know if you ever saw his How to Search Your Kid's Room video. He put it out when he was a state senator. It's uproariously funny. I'm going to play a minute of it because it's just so funny. This is teaching people, giving people instruction as a former police officer, how you should search your kid's room. Cut 17.
You can look in the jewelry box. A jewelry box of this nature, maybe a simple jewelry box, but if you look through it closely, you don't know what your child may be hiding. For instance, a gun could be hidden, a small caliber weapon could be hidden inside a jewelry box. So when your child brings in his popular knapsack with many different locations, look through it to see what exactly is your child carrying in addition to a book. Something simple as a crack pipe, a used crack pipe. Could he have found it on the street? That's quite possible. But this is a discussion piece where you should start speaking with him to find out what is he doing with it. Behind a picture frame, you can find bullets. What does that mean to find bullets? Does it mean your child is carrying a gun? No. Where there's smoke, there's possible fire. Where there's a bullet, there's possibly a gun. The baby doll could be just a baby doll, but also it could be a place where you can secrete or hide drugs. Run your hands over the pillows. This one could be hidden inside a pillow, a gun.
I like the crack pipe as a conversation starter. You find a crack pipe in your kid's backpack. It doesn't mean anything, but it's a conversation starter. So here's the thing. This is typical Democrat urban politics, taking money and giving favors. You can't tell me that they could not indict the mayor of Chicago, the mayor of Detroit, Gavin Newsom. They could indict all these people. They can indict any one of these guys for taking money. That's the way urban machine Democrat politics works. I'm not saying they shouldn't indict him. I'm not saying he shouldn't go down. But the thing is, if he steps down, if he's forced out, the person who replaces him is a far leftist. So Eric Adams made this statement about the indictments just before they came down. He knew they were coming down.
I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit. If I'm charged, I know I am innocent. I will request an immediate trials so the New Yorkers can hear the truth. New Yorkers know my story. They know where I come from. I have been fighting injustice my entire life. That fight has continued as your mayor. Despite our pleas, when the federal government did nothing as its broken immigration policies overloaded our shelter system with no relief, I put the people of New York before party and politics.
Now, the funny thing is, I believe this too. I believe that they are investigating him for things that he did, but I believe they're investigating because he complained about the border, opening the border, which is just an admission of failure. You're bringing in new people because your policies have failed to the people who are already here. That's the reason. You're importing voters because your policies have failed for the people who are already here. You're importing cheap workers because your labor policies have failed, because all their policies have failed. It's all failure. And he pointed it out, and he said, you're going to destroy this city, and that's why they're investigating him. And it's the same, as I say, he was elected to fight crime. All his opponents were far to the left of him. He's a leftist. He's a Democrat because only Democrats get elected in New York since Giuliani, who was a great mayor, but they just forgot all that. So they're indicting him to bring in the leftist. She is pro-immigration. She's pro-crime. She's going to help the prosecutor not prosecute crimes. She's exactly what they want in there. Mark Robinson, the same thing, Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. I saw him on Gorka's show. He's saying he didn't go. He didn't say he didn't go on the porn site. He's saying he didn't make the egregious comments that he's supposed to have made on the porn site. But who cares? It's 14 years ago. So it would mean he's an amazing hypocrite. Are you going to get all the hypocrites out of government? Why is it? I can't help noticing that all of these people are opponents of the administration, and so these investigations are true lies. They are probably investigating things for stuff they probably did. I'm not saying Robinson didn't go on the porn site. I don't know that he did, but it wouldn't shock me if he did. But all I'm saying is there must be a lot of people in this country, a lot of officials who go on porn sites, and much worse. But why suddenly do these investigations come to light when they can hurt Donald Trump, when they can help the Democrat administration? It's because of the failure. You're misusing the law. You're misusing the investigative branches. You're misusing the intelligence divisions because you have failed, and you want to silence your failure to cling to power instead of changing your mind. The Daily Wire's first ever theatrical release, Am I Racist?, remains a top 10 movie in the country. It's verified hot on Rotten Tomatoes with a 98% audience score. The only thing better than seeing it in theaters is having a theater all to yourself. Now's your chance with the Am I Racist Theater Takeover Sweepstakes. One lucky winner will claim an entire theater for a private showing with 50 of their closest friends. We'll provide the snacks and drinks. You just bring your crew and get ready for a hilarious night out. Plus, you'll roll up to your screening in style on a brand new Razor scooter, just like Matt Walsh rides in the hit comedy. Get all the details now at AmIRacist.com. Final chapter, Sweet Little Lies. Now, all week long, I've been thinking about these letters I've been getting that I requested on the dating scene and why it was so hard for boys and girls to get together and get married and start families and find somebody to live their lives with. And I've been reading the letters that have come in. There are too many for me to read them all. There's just so many of them. But I've been reading the letters that have come in. And they, I'll get to this in a minute. I will read you some of the excerpts of the letters, but they almost all say basically the same thing. They basically create a picture of the usual problems with finding a mate exacerbated by the internet in various ways. And the reason I wanted to talk about this as part of the show and not just part of the Klapbacks is because I can't help feeling that the problem is the same one, a failed philosophy, which is feminism and the sexual revolution and all this, which makes money and gives power to a small elite. A small elite. Rich people love sexual decadence because they can have fun, but they probably won't make too many mistakes because they're highly educated and highly aware, and they can cover their mistakes with and with money, and they get medical treatment and all that stuff. It's not the same as when the poor make mistakes and they have children out of wedlock or they have get diseases and all that stuff. Elites can handle decadence. They like decadence. It's good for them, but it's not good for everybody else. And it's especially bad for the middle class because it destroys people in the middle class. So it's the same thing, this failed philosophy that no one wants to let go of because it helps the elites. And so they keep selling it to the people. And because it means the people can get laid, basically, the people are saying, go ahead, lie to us, keep telling us that things are going great. And meanwhile, the birth rate is falling. Meanwhile, people are alone. Meanwhile, people are addicted to the lies that give them instantaneous pleasure, but long-term dysfunction. That's exactly the situation with the economy, exactly the situation with the international scene, and it's the situation with the romantic scene as well. So let's take a look at some of these letters just very briefly, and then I'll give you my response, and we'll go to Klavan Klapbacks.
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Yeah!
That's good. That's exactly right. So most of the people said the same thing. Here, I'll read one from Maddie. It says, what seems to me is the most recurring problem is not a lack of good guys, but two distinct categories with very little overlap. On the one hand, there are guys who are great. We share all the same values, and I want more than anything to make things work between us. But for some reason, these good guys are almost always so nervous or reserved that it's super difficult for things to go anywhere, especially with someone like me or most of my friends who don't have experience. And so we want a man to lead and initiate and make us feel comfortable. On the other hand, there are guys who are confident. We have a great time on the first few dates, but then it becomes clear that there's some kind of values misalignment, different religion. He's not interested in waiting for marriage, or he lacks ambition being the most common. It seems like there's a very small overlap between confident guys and guys who have good values. Very important point. This is from Alicia, who's a therapist. She says, a few things stand out to me. People are more disconnected from a broader community. So in online dating apps, people simply stop talking to each other with no explanation. And in real life, too, they're ghosting. They don't have to see each other again. A lot of women and men I speak with have difficulty figuring out what they should be doing differently because they don't get feedback in their relationships. People just disappear. And I notice the influences of larger systemic issues as well. High divorce rates, porn, accompanying porn addiction, feminism, lack of community, lack of groundedness to older generations, engaging in relationships online. Basically, what is happening to people in the dating world is the same thing that is happening to Democrats and far-right people. It's that they are living in their imagination, and they are going on the internet and finding the places where the lies confirm their imagination. And they are therefore living outside of reality, always a bad thing to do, okay? So that's the picture I get, is that online dating gives one of the things that online dating does is it gives an illusion of choice and widespread selection. And what really happens in a lot of these dating apps, and I've heard this from numerous people, both male and female, is that a small number of men who seem to be high value get a lot of the girls, okay? And the girls don't want to say to themselves, gee, I don't want the best guy there. He looks like the best guy. So because I don't want to say to myself, I'm not the elite, so I'm going to go after somebody who might make me happy, who maybe isn't as rich or maybe isn't as confident, maybe isn't as handsome. I'm just as good as the next girl. I'm going to keep going after this guy. Now, the problem with this guy is he's confident, he's handsome, he makes a lot of money, but now he's getting all the girls. He's a player. He doesn't want to stop. And I've heard from guys, by the way, that this is a problem that they have that's making them miserable, but that's okay. They're still going to do it because the pleasure is, they keep saying to themselves, well, should I settle for this girl when there's so many other girls in line? And the girls are thinking, why is it that I keep going out with guys and they ghost me? Why aren't I not going out with other guys? And the problem with these other guys now is they've been eliminated from the competition, so they become schlubs. They don't work on themselves. They don't do the things that you need to do. So I started to think about this all this stuff. And you know, I understand that I'm way past the modern world and I'm much older than all these people. But I started to look back at my life, which was not, you know, I wound up with the greatest wife on earth. So it's not entirely a failure. So I wanted to think, is there anything that I did that is relevant to this? And there are two things that I think are really important that I did that are relevant. I didn't let myself get sucked in to the arguments over the culture. Here's the thing. It's like the culture is just the field of play. Right? We all get a field of play. There are always difficulties meeting people of the opposite sex. There are always challenges. There's always rejection. There's always fear. There's always danger. It's going to be different in your time than it was in my time, but it's always going to be there. It's made worse, you can say, by the internet, but it was worse with other things that did other things at that time. I just said to myself, feminism hit a real strong peak when I was a young man, and I just said to myself, I'm not doing this. This is a stupid idea. I am not going to do it. I'm going to live by my code, not by the code of the people who hated feminism. Like David Mamet would write these plays about women and how bad women were. I thought, no, I like the women. I hate these women on TV that I see, but the women around me are perfectly nice. You know, only some of them are falling for this stuff, so I'm just going to ignore it. And I just decided I was going to live by my code, which was to be a gentleman. Gentleman's code. I was going to live by honor, politeness, integrity. Sometimes I failed. Sometimes I had to learn. Sometimes I just actually went bad. But I tried all the time to live by honor, politeness, integrity. I tried to be who I said I was and do what I promised I would do. And basically, over time, I actually became that person, I think I can fairly say. And I stopped using words that people were using. I stopped telling women they were hot or a smoke show or whatever the terms were then. I started talking to women about being charming, being appealing, being lovely, being feminine, being sweet, because those are the things I wanted. And I found those women who would accept that as a compliment were the women that I wanted. I created my culture inside me, and I let that become the culture that attracted people to me when it did, who were more like me. You know, I keep hearing people, this is the thing about all this, what bothers me about all the stuff that people say on the internet is even the stuff that's true is untrue, just like the true lies, right? They talk about men have to be strong, they have to be the leader, they have to be tough. Okay. But, you know, if you get attacked by an army of ninjas, you know, yeah, it's good to have a couple of moves that you can use so maybe you don't get killed. But most of the days, being kind and caring and, you know, interested in people really is enough. Just fulfilling your responsibilities joyfully is huge, And a lot of the guys I heard from dealt with fear. They're afraid of being rejected, not knowing what to say, fear of not knowing how to meet people, fear of getting Me Too reactions, being called down to HR. And here's the thing, I will tell you, these are words that every man should hear, especially young men, okay? Everyone is afraid. Everyone is afraid. You just happen to be the person who's not going to let the fear stop you. Everyone is afraid all the time. You just happen to be that guy who's going to do what he's going to do, going to meet that girl, going to approach that girl, going to go in even though she's standing with her friends, even though she's too beautiful for you, all those things. You just happen to be that guy who's going to do it because that's the secret. The secret is everybody's afraid and you do it anyway. So that was the first thing. I decided that I was going to be who I was going to be, completely disregard. I could tell you hilarious stories about my complete disregard of the race questions, which were big then, and the feminist questions. I just ignored them all. I thought, this is who I'm going to be. And over time, that actually worked. And the second, and this came later, but it was one of the smartest decisions I ever made, and one of the it's stupid that I had to think of it. I stopped going out with women I didn't like just because I wanted to sleep with them. I stopped making excuses for women I didn't like just because they were hot. I stopped trying to get laid and started trying to meet women I liked as people who I was also attracted to. And it's a funny thing to say to guys, stop thinking about sex. You're going to think about sex. Stop thinking about getting laid. That's not what you're after. You're after a life. This is another huge lie. Wouldn't a throuple be nice? What about dressing up and beating each other with whips? This is not what you're looking for. You're looking to build a life with someone you like. Okay, and enjoy sleeping with, and think is pretty, and think is nice to be with. That's what you're looking for, You're going to be married. I've been with my wife 50 years. A million things happen to you: sickness and health, and winning the big things, and having big victories and big defeats. Amazing adventures and amazing periods where you just don't know where you are. All those things are going to happen with you. You want to share those things with someone you like. How hard is that to figure out? All this stuff about men are like this and women are like this. It's all of this stuff. It's all bull. It's all ridiculous. You're looking for somebody you like. Men and women are people with gender differences, okay? And those gender differences are an absolute delight in people you like. And they're just a pain in the ass in people you don't like, okay? They're just traits in people you don't like. But if you find a girl you like, she will be girl enough for you. Society has all these problems. They're none of your business. When you're talking about this, they are none of your business. It's like listening, it's the state of play. It's like listening to a quarterback who says, well, I can't play in Arrowback Stadium, because it's too noisy. That's his job. That's his job, okay? It's his job. It's your job to find a girl. It's your job to find a guy. And I know women have a different set of problems, but for most, there's some people who aren't suited for marriage. That's fine. Don't get married. That's fine. We're all individuals, okay? Most of us, family is where the love and the joy is and the meaning of life comes from. And, you can have all the big dreams you want. That you have to be realistic about who you want to be, but you can have big dreams. But it's amazing how happy you will be if you have enough money and people around you that you love. You will be amazingly happy. You may still be disappointed that you didn't become center fielder for the Yankees. I'm still sorry that didn't happen to me. It was never going to happen to me, so I didn't waste my time trying to do it. Okay? That's important. I just took the talents that I had and made the most of them. You're looking to build a family and a life. And the first thing you got to do, okay, the first thing you have to do is stop talking about the problems. Stop worrying about what a man should be and what a woman should be and and start thinking about who you are made to be. Who are you made to be? And if you're a lady, you're probably going to find out that you're made to be a mom. Odds are. You might find out you're made to be something else, but odds are 90%. You're going to find out you're made to be a mom and a homemaker. And the thing about that, and if you're a guy, you're probably find out you'd like to have a wife and a family and kids who look up to you and kids that you can raise and teach them the things that you love and teach them to love the things you love. And here's the thing about that. The way you begin to have that is to think about who you'd like to spend time with, what kind of person you'd like to spend time with, and who she would like you to be. And you have to become somebody that is really you. You can't be a fake about it, but you have to become that person that you want to be. And you have to start doing that now. You have to start doing that before you find out before you find somebody. You have to don't look like a slob. You have to start dressing like you're not a slob. You have to start speaking with a little bit more class, I mean, how hard is it to stop cursing all the time? How hard is it to forego the next tattoo? How hard is it to put on some clothes that it's not a baseball cap on backwards? This is the stuff. It's amazing to me that people talk about like, oh, well, if you're James Bond, do this. If you're James Bond, you're not going to be James Bond. And one more thing I have to talk about because it keeps coming up. I could talk about this for 40 minutes, but I won't. They talk about the relationship of men and women, and especially Bible Christians who talk about submission to authority. There is a perfection of submission. We submit to God, and God makes you better. You don't get weaker when you submit to God. You become more powerful. Anybody who's ever done it knows it. You become more yourself. You become more powerful. This is true also if you're a boy with a good father. If you submit to the authority of your father, you will become stronger, not weaker. Even though you're surrendering to someone else's authority, you will become stronger over time. If you are a wife with a good husband and you submit to the authority of your husband, you will not become less. You will become more. These are all true things. But we can't make laws about them. We can't enforce them because there aren't that many people who can be a good father. You also have to be able to stand up to your father sometimes. You also have to be able to kindly tell your husband that maybe he's making a mistake. These are things that happen. These are models for things. But again, if you find a person that you like, if you find a person that you can be with and be happy with, a lot of these things will fall into place. You'll find the authority you'll need. You become the man you're supposed to be. She will help you become the man you're supposed to be. You will become the woman you're supposed to be. Your children and your husband will help you become that. And just think about how different that is than people telling you to show power by pimping a woman or slapping her around or sleeping with a lot of people. You don't even want that life. You don't even want that life. That's a fantasy life, So here's my best piece of advice. Stop living in your head and stop living online and start living for that other person before you meet them and becoming the person that you want to be so that when you meet that person, she or he will want to be with you. Become the person he or she is going to love, and you will find each other. You will find each other. All right, we got to go to Member Block, which is going to be fantastic, by the way. So become a member today. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. It's that or Klavanlessness. So come to Member Block.
The stage is set. The stakes are sky high. Senator Vance, Governor Walz, face off. But who will land the knockout punch? Don't watch the debate alone. Experience it with the most trusted names in conservative media. DailyWire Backstage brings you unfiltered commentary, biting wit, and expert analysis you won't get anywhere else. Join Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, and Jeremy Boring for a debate night you'll never forget. Daily Wire Backstage, Tuesday, October 1st, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, only on Daily Wire Plus.